What's happening, gang? It's your boy Retro back again with another reaction video. Yeah. Today we got another huge update. Now you guys can probably already tell that it is going down. Just by that title alone, you guys are definitely going to want to check this one out. This was going to be an update to the last update on the overwhelming Somalian fraud evidence that was discovered throughout the state of Minnesota. As it now looks like that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is in on it as well, with new evidence showing that he knew about it all along, guys. I'm excited to get into this one, so I'm gonna hop straight into it. All I ask that you guys please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and without further ado, let's hop straight into it, folks. Check this one out.
So over the last 10 years, Minnesota's Somali community, it's about 100,000 people, mostly in Minneapolis, a neighborhood called Little Mogadishu, for obvious reasons, has been conducting fraud at an eye-popping scale. I mean, truly extraordinary. We're talking about billions of dollars, billions with a B, that are getting sucked out of taxpayer programs, routed through various fake NGOs into the pockets of Somalis in Minnesota. But one detail that we uncovered, they're actually taking bags of cash, taking them on commercial airplanes out of Seattle, out of Minneapolis, out of other airports, flying this cash to Mogadishu, where it's dispersed through a network of informal money changers. The Al-Shabaab terrorists take a cut. And it's like every government program imaginable, they're setting up these front organizations, autism, social services, feeding the hungry. And they're pulling in, tens of millions, if now not hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And the other kind of dirty secret of this story is that the Minnesota state government, the Democrats who are in charge, Tim Walz and others, have effectively turned a blind eye to this because they don't want to offend the Somalis. They don't want to, earn the accusation of racism, which the Somali activists are very ready and very eager to deploy. And they feel that they need the Somali vote in Minneapolis to win statewide. And I hope that the story will have some impact on the particular level, meaning law enforcement, which has been doing a good job rounding up some of these groups, will extend their efforts, but also opening up these larger questions about immigration, about identity, about who we let into the country, what are our expectations. This should be an obvious one, right? You can't steal billions of dollars from taxpayers. That's like a no.
All right, folks, so the evidence is very overwhelming there. There's clearly a Somalian fraud issue throughout the state of Minnesota, but instead of taking accountability or trying to put a stop and end to this widespread fraud, the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, is now running cover for Somalians and trying to shift all the blame over to President Donald Trump. Makes no sense whatsoever.
Speaking of the Somali community, President Trump is targeting them and your state in part. He's citing fraud as the reason for his crackdown. Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy. And as you heard Senator Kelly say, this president has cut a lot of inspector generals. He's cut programs that could help us tackle this on. So we'll take it on. We'll put folks in jail. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't care what your religion is, your color. If you're committing crimes, these are programs that were meant to serve students with autism, to housing, and to making sure people had enough to eat. There's a reason Minnesota ranks as the top. Lowest childhood poverty, best place for children to live. People are taking advantage of that. They're going to prison. That is totally disconnected with demonizing an entire group of people who came here fleeing civil war and created a vibrant community that makes Minnesota and this country better. But that's Donald Trump. Deflect, demonize, come up with no solutions. He's not going to help fix anything on fraud. My God, there's a big difference between fraud and corruption is something he knows about.
Now that right there is what I like to call a political pivot coming from that governor of Minnesota, the Somalian fraud infested state. Tim Walz attempts to shift it all over, change the subject quickly when you get on the topic of Somalian fraud. He wants to start bringing up President Donald Trump and saying he knows all about corruption. You need to ask Trump. But no, it's your failed leadership that this happened underneath. You got to think Minnesota has become the Somalian capital of the United States of America with the most Somalian residents throughout their state. It makes no sense. And the things that they were getting away with just raised a lot of questions of concern. Tim Walz, what were you doing this entire time? If you weren't a part of it, you better start talking right now. But it looks like he may have been in on it too. Check out this next one, guys. When it was first brought, all the fraud was brought to the attention of Governor Tim Walz. He attempted to cover this up by silencing all whistleblowers with threats.
The New York Times wrote about it as well, saying that how fraud swamped Minnesota's social services system on Tim Walz's watch. And this is also a lawyer for one of the defendants saying no one was doing anything about the red flags. It was like someone was stealing money from the cookie jar and they kept refilling it. Lisa, there were whistleblowers who were ignored.
That is what we are hearing. And we did put additional whistleblower protection in during this last legislative session. We also tried to put in an office of Inspector General, an independent office of Inspector General, and the Democrats in the House denied us that opportunity. It had been passed in the Senate, bipartisan, and we could not get it through the House as a protection, I believe, for Governor Walz, not wanting that office of Inspector General on an outside view looking in to see what he was really doing. I think he prevented that from going forward.
So there it is. It's all starting to come together, make a lot more sense. Tim Walz isn't just running cover for these Somalian fraudsters. He's also participated. I mean, whistleblowers are coming out with these claims, evidence of fraud, and instead of acting upon it like a true leader would, Governor Tim Walz decides to send threats back and retaliate, and folks do act upon these claims of fraud. And meanwhile, these are the folks that Tim Walz is covering for and shielding. Check this out. Somalis have their own mortgage companies that pull strings, quote unquote, do illegal things to get these third worlders houses within America. These folks are living out the American dream right here, all thanks to your boy Tim Walz. And they don't speak a lick of English. I mean, imagine how many homeless veterans we could house if all of these people are deported like they should be. Deport them all and house all our veterans. Not to mention, I mean, just think about American citizens. We raised up our entire lives here, and we can't even achieve this dream, the American dream, yet buying a house because interest rates are sky high. It makes no sense. These Somalian fraudsters come over here and they get exactly what we're all looking for. That is very sad to see, and that's not the worst. So I want you guys to check this one out with me as well. This one from Dustin Grage. Looks like Walz is giving an entrepreneurship award to a known fraudster, and here he is pictured with her. This is Amran Abukar. Hopefully I was saying that correctly, but let's just hop on it. Since we're back on the topic of Tim Walz and the Feeding Our Future scam, here's a picture of Walz, picture with the defendant number 58 in the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. Amran Abukar was literally given an entrepreneurship award by Governor Tim. Well, I mean, this is the stuff that I say you can't make up even if you try. And this what really makes me believe that Tim Walz is in on it as well. We need a full-scale investigation onto Tim Walz, his office, and the folks that were sending those threats and threatening to retaliate against folks if they did act upon these claims of Somalian fraud. And then you know it's bad when even Minnesota Social Services is coming out on X. Their account is calling out Tim Walz for his retaliation tactics. Check this one out with me. It says Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud throughout the state of Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of the fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz, certain DFL members, and in different mainstream media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who can we turn to. And finally, we're seeing mainstream media outlets like the New York Times running headlines on this, saying how fraud swamped Minnesota's social services system on Tim Walz's watch. And I'm so glad that we're finally seeing everyone joining together to call this guy out, hold him accountable. He's supposed to be the guy in charge. It makes no sense. But you guys probably could already guess what happened next to this Minnesota Social Services account. Tim Walz had them taken down. Minnesota Department of Human Services employees, the account got suspended just the other day. It literally was a tweet from December 1st. They suspended them shortly after they were calling out Tim Walz and bringing this truth to light. And then X users rallied around this account, Minnesota Social Services account, and said, Elon Musk, please immediately review the suspension of DHS whistleblower account. They've provided important information on fraud and transparency issues in Minnesota. And removing their voice undermines public accountability. Absolutely it does. And shortly after, we did see this account being reinstated. So very glad to see. But then that makes you question even more of Tim Walz, his leadership, what's going on. Instead of addressing this fraud, he continues to retaliate against these individuals, even getting this account here suspended on X. And I want to quickly flip over to the response from the White House and what their next steps are, because it's very clear that Governor Tim Walz knows way more than what he's leading us to believe. We got that White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt absolutely embarrassing Tim Walz in her latest press briefing. Check this one out.
About how Somali immigrants in Minnesota have been ripping off American taxpayers. In fact, 86 people have been charged in a rampant and widespread fraud scheme spanning multiple programs in Minnesota. Of those 86, 78 of those people are Somali, 91% of them charged. So far, 59 of those people have been convicted for their roles in fraud plots that have stolen $1 billion from taxpayers. In one scheme, and this is egregious, a nonprofit and its affiliates with these Somali migrants claimed to have fed tens of thousands of American children during the pandemic. They were reimbursed for those meals by taxpayers. However, federal prosecutors found that almost all of those meals were never even delivered to hungry children. In fact, those organizations' leaders spent the money on houses, luxury cars, and real estate in Turkey and Kenya.
And my big takeaway from this one right here is the White House is definitely onto the tricks and the schemes coming from these Somalian fraudsters throughout the state of Minnesota. That Governor Tim Walz isn't too far off his tricks and schemes. They're not going unnoticed either. He's not off the hook just yet. I could definitely see investigation and prosecution in the very near future, because this wasn't incompetence. This was blatant negligence coming from the governor of Minnesota. He's definitely in on it somehow, some way. And I believe Fox News The 5 Greg Gutfeld says it best right here describing this situation.
It's like, the only thing I'm going to take responsibility for is putting like 2 people in jail. After what, I don't know, is it like a decade, $1 billion, in which they ripped off the elderly, infants, the sick, the hungry. They should be, right? This guy shows up. Hey, I arrested. No, you're like the guy who shows up and eats the free pizza, but you didn't help any of us move the furniture. Hey guys, I'm here. What you're seeing is the ultimate opportunity cost of electing a vacuous virtue signaler with no skills at all. While he was pushing tampons and trans in men's rooms, the Somalis were ripping off the state like it was a 24-hour mini mart in Philadelphia. This is what happens when you elect a person who will say anything but is incapable of doing anything. This party, his party, they are the ultimate in self-serving, self-seeking selfishness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They realize that there is a reward in saying yes to everything without having any responsibility to say no. So, and again, it goes back to what I said in the A block. If you were to call out on this fraud, you go, oh, you hate Somalians. Why are they all Somalians? You hate us. No, we hate the people who were doing this. You got to give credit to Walter Kern, who covered this in, County Highway, and Chris Rufo, this is back in 2023, who then really circulated it into the media, or else the New York Times never would have written about this. And it's, once again, if the Democrats reintroduce the concept of accountability to their actions, they might actually save their party. You need a wing, Jessica, in your party, the DWA party. Democrats with accountability, because there is none. It's almost like when the Democrats had the DLC, the Democrats
Leadership Council,
like cantaloupes.
Antelope.
I don't know.
That's what we called it.
Yo, there we have it, guys. Oh my goodness. And I believe Greg Gutfeld summed this one up the best there with this whole Tim Walz Somalian fraud debacle. It's been going on, taking place in his state, right underneath his nose. It's time for the Democratic Party to introduce just a little slither, maybe an ounce of accountability within their party, because far too often we see these folks that are dead to rights, they're as guilty as could be, and then they get off the hook, dodge all consequences or accountability by saying this one line. They say the big bad orange guy, big bad Trump in the Oval Office is the reason why, or Trump did this and that's the reason why I did that. And they get off the hook. It's like it all disappears. All the trouble that they were in, it goes away with that one line. I mean, we've seen a similar situation with Tish James, Big Tish, in the state of New York with her Virginia property, the Brooklyn brownstone as well. I mean, she was as guilty as could be. All the evidence showed she committed blatant mortgage fraud throughout maybe 20 years. And she said that one line. This was a political revenge tour coming from the President of the United States. He's weaponizing the DOJ to go after his political opponents. And guess what happened? We not heard much about that case. The judge is very skeptical. Pretty sure the case just got put on pause yet again because she said that infamous line. It's time for that to stop. Hopefully that ends here with Tim Walz. I mean, I just refuse to believe that all of this was going on right underneath his nose in his state. He had whistleblowers coming out with tons of evidence saying, hey, the Somalians, they're up to it again. And Tim Walz didn't act. He silenced them. He pushed them aside and said, hey, don't speak any more of this. I refuse to believe that Tim Walz is not in on this whole heist. This money grab coming from Somalia is not believed. This definitely deserves a little bit more investigation or looking into by the Trump administration, guys. But I'm going to definitely follow any more updates to come on this one right here with your boy RetroStef, guys. Definitely hop in that comment section. Comments are open, and I'm excited to hear what you guys are hearing. What's the word on the street out there? Also, make sure you guys please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you'd enjoy more content like this, catch you guys on the next one. We